So the next one I was going to go through is low box step up. Again, really commonly used by all sorts of jumpers. We're all probably really familiar with it, but just a little video. Tends to be nice and heavy. And again, the key thing is that there's two things, again, same things we talked about in terms of setup. First is, if we've got our bar on, we're going to pull back and down from the shoulder blades. And we're also going to think about what's happening with that leg that's on the platform, or that leg that's on the box. We're going to, again, almost like screw that foot into the ground. Going to keep big toe down and rotate the knee open. So that we're engaging that hip through. And we're in that nice position. And then, probably one of the most important ones is making the connection across what's known as the posterior sling. The posterior sling in this case is from that lat, that left lat, into that right glute. And that's the sling that's going to be active whenever you're running, when you're doing anything really athletic. Okay, that connection from one hip to the opposite shoulder. So we're going to make sure that we engage that in our setup by setting our left shoulder back, getting our right hip switched on, and thinking about those slings across our back whenever we're working. And then as you're doing the movement, it's pushing down, not up. So if you see these two videos, one he's doing it right, and one he's doing it wrong. And can we see the difference? Yeah. And it's what's happening in the back foot. So on the left video, he's doing all the work from the left leg. He's driving down, and nothing's happening from the right leg. Whereas on the right video, he's actually pushing off the right leg. So we've got this exercise that we think we're developing and we're working our left leg, but actually an awful lot of the work's actually be done by the right side pushing up. So it's a big cue to think about pushing down from the leg that's meant to be doing the work, rather than pushing up off the leg that's meant to be resting for the rep. And again, why it's important to think about this is to link it back to what we talked about at the very start. That you're not doing a squat to be good at squatting. You're not doing a step up to be good at step ups. You're doing it to cause an adaptation that's going to help your athlete when it comes to doing their event. And when it comes to these exercises, what are we really looking to change? What are we looking to develop? Well, for me, whenever I look at an exercise like that, we're looking to develop the ability to generate eccentric force fast, and transition to a concentric effort. So as they land, they're able to, from that leg that's landed, generate a lot of force to slow their body down and immediately change direction quickly. But we're looking to do that in that leg, yeah? The leg that we're loading. So that's why, again, you can see that as it's been performed here, that back leg is doing an awful lot of push-off. So there's a land and there's a requirement, there's a reliance on the back leg to do an awful lot of work. Okay? So still going to get something from this, but if we're looking to optimize it and think about it relative to what we want to do, we're just going to cue that front leg to do more in terms of decelerating and exploding and get the focus back on the front leg. Does that all make sense? If we're looking for, in this case, where we're looking for just loading that knee, developing high force capabilities at the knee joint, I would just do step up. If you're looking to develop that switch, then exactly it's different, because Grant's talking about pulling that thigh through, and as you step up, the other thigh comes through and you end up in that position, yeah, and stepping back down. And it's what you're using the exercise for. Like we'll use that, as you can probably even see. Yeah, you see Neve in the background doing that same exercise, yeah, where she's going up against the band. But what you're doing there is you're hitting down with one side, but the big thing is cueing the other side to come through fast. Because it's like trying to move one leg quickly while the other leg moves slowly. It's impossible to do. So a lot of the time whenever you're doing that, explosive step down and pull through, you're limited by how fast your recovery is, rather than by how hard you drive into the ground with the front leg. The height it is. Yeah, the box, the height it is, you're going to keep it very quad focused. The higher you go and the more you get the hip into flexion, the more you're going to load through hamstring and hip itself. So again, it's what you want to get from it. A high box step up is actually, we use that quite a bit for hamstring, versus this low box, you're using it more for the quad, because you're getting the leg up in a really high box position with some loading. And then to get yourself going, this hip, this bicep femoris especially, gets an awful lot of load to generate force into the ground. So it's the nice thing about it is it looks like the same exercise. It's both called a step up, but by changing the height of the box, you're changing what you're overloading and changing what's going to happen as a result of it. We've got, if we think about the knee and being stiff as you hit the ground, we've got the kneel. The next thing is to think about actually developing the hammer and the ability to drive down into the ground in the first place and produce force. Again, I've just used running as that example, but we've got our runner nicely hitting the ground, staying lovely and stiff as he hits the ground. But the force, a lot of it's coming from the hip. A lot of it's coming from the hip generating force to drive the leg into the ground so as he can hit hard, be stiff, utilize elastic energy, spring off. And common way across track and field to develop that is by using the clean. So imagine a lot of people use cleans, either full cleans from the floor yet. So we've got our clean, okay? So we use here with athletes both power cleans from the floor and hang cleans. We tend to use hang clean tends to be easier to coach, but ultimately, if you'll lift more weight with a clean from the floor, and we'll kind of talk about that, and you'll kind of understand that why as we go through. Or you should be able to lift more from the floor. So in terms of our setup position, these are the key things to think about. As our athlete sets up, the weight should be mid-foot. Knees should be open. Again, this is a key thing when you're doing anything, and you'll almost see that there's a lot of these cues are across all the exercises. You're thinking about that setup position. You're thinking about engaging from the hips. You're thinking about getting those knees open to get those hips switched on. And you can see there as well, the hips will be higher than the knee. Shoulders will be higher than the hips. And the shoulders should be slightly in front of the bar, okay? Slightly in front or just over the bar, okay? The key thing for the setup position for a clean from the floor is where the weight is in the foot and where the shoulders are. Now, if I would say, if you had to think about two things, it's that the shoulders shouldn't be too far forward, they definitely shouldn't be behind the bar, and the weight shouldn't be back in the foot, shouldn't be too far forward, it should be in the middle of the foot. If you get those two things right, it sets up the rest of the lift. And then chest up. And then obviously making sure before you lift, you put some tension into the bar, so you're not having an athlete go from 0 force to 100% straight away. They're putting tension in, they're stiffening everything, and they're ready to lift. Okay, so then we've got what's called our first pull. And then from this position, the athlete's going to transfer the weight back on the foot. The key thing being the trunk angle as they do this remains constant. So with the trunk angle, as they lift off the floor, they're not opening up the trunk angle. The trunk angle is going to stay where it is. The weight's going to transfer back on the foot. The trunk angle is going to stay where it is because the weight's transferring back in the foot. The bar is going to go slightly back in the foot as well. And that's going to result in the shoulders being in front of the bar. We get a lift. And she's going to end up in that sort of position, which is easier to see just from there. Okay? From the end of that, that's where we classify the end of the first pull. So from the end of the first pull, there's a transition to where the athlete's going to get under the bar into a position where they can be really powerful. And what's going to happen is from that position, the weight is going to transfer from the back of the foot into the midfoot. The trunk is going to straighten. The arms are going to stay long, so we're not going to pull out with our arms. And our shoulders are going to finish over the bar, and that's our transition position. Where shoulders are over the bar is about mid-thigh. The weight's in the middle of the foot, and then we can explode up from there. And that's the mid-5 position there. So they'll transition to that position and then explode from there. Whereas you're coming into the catch, again, the arms are staying long. Everything's happening from the hips. They're extending straight up. And then as they come into the catch, they're rotating around the bar. The bar is not rotating around them. So they're not making the bar come round. They're coming up and onto the bar. And then the bar lands on the shoulders, not the wrists. So you're creating a shelf for the bar to sit on. So altogether, it should look something like that. The most common mistakes when it comes to cleans from the floor are effectively through the first pull, okay? Where as the person sets up and they start lifting, they open up too much, yeah? They open up their trunk too much. Then they're ineffective in their weight transfer. They don't get the weight back on the heels. And if they've gone back on their heels and their shoulders and they've opened their chest up, they're going to head that direction anyway. Or they pull the bar too early, so as they get by the knee, instead of the arms staying long, you see the elbows bend. There's an old saying in lifting that when the elbows bend, the power ends. It just means you can't transfer the force from the floor as effectively anymore. You're using your arms just to transfer force from the ground up through. So keeping those arms long. And then people, you've all seen it, people trying to force the bar to come to them as it gets heavier, trying to force it to come to them rather than being comfortable in rotating around the bar, to them. The difference, probably to say, the difference between a power clean and a full clean is only where you catch it. A power clean is caught in this position here. A full clean is, you see, in the Olympics where they catch it all the way down. That's the only difference between the two. But we still want them, we still want them to come up, and we want them to rotate underneath and catch it. You emphasize a high pull. Yeah, sometimes with the high pull emphasizes them pulling the bar, as opposed to what should be happening is you're following the bar. So the work's been done by here, you've given it a shrug, the bar's coming up. As it's coming up, you've got that opportunity to get underneath it, rather than feel like you want to keep pulling it up. It's like if you create tension in your arms, you can't be fast in your arms. Yeah? See, and we talk about running, boxing, fighting, anything. You can't create a strong, heavy fist and move fast. It has to be loose. And it's the same thing here. Creating tension in your arm, but trying to get it to move fast is not going to happen. It's got to be a loose arm to come underneath the bar. From the start position, basically what should be happening is the knees are extending, the weight's coming back, the hip is actually staying in its position. Yeah? Whereas what happens a lot is that, yeah? And then when you're in that position, you'll see it now. It causes issues for the hang clean. It causes issues for the second pull because you're out of position. Because if I'm here and then I'm trying to transition under a bar, if my shoulders are already on top of the bar, I've got nowhere to go. I'll either go backwards or, as I'll show in a video, I'll do something different to try and compensate for that. A couple of exercises I'll do in drills will just be to set a bar up in a rack and get them into that idea of actually rotating down and round. Playing about with their position, coming in a little bit wider with the elbow can help. But also the big thing is getting them to understand that you're not catching it in your hand, you're catching it on your shoulder. Yeah? So when you catch it, you're almost releasing your hand. My shoulder's a bit messed up right now, but almost releasing your hand to get into a position where you create a shelf. So there is a key point with it. When you come around to a catch, you're catching it here. You're creating a shelf across here for it to land on, okay? If you're too low here, you'll hit it in your collarbone, you'll know about it, and again, you've probably seen people do that there. You also see people not get all the way through, irritate the wrist up because again, they've kept tension in their hand. The idea is you come up and you rotate round and it lands on this shelf, not on the wrist. The reason I said at the very start is that basically you should be able to clean more from the floor than you clean from a hang, is because all a hang clean is starting from that second pull position. That's the only difference. Whenever you do a clean from the floor, all you're trying to do is hit that position with momentum. And if you've got momentum on the bar is going to be lighter as you come through that position, so theoretically you can lift more. But that's the only difference between a hang clean and a clean from the floor. Momentum through that position. And this is our key hang clean position. This is why an RDL is quite a nice exercise to use to develop it up. The weight is on the heels. The ankles are slightly extended, certainly not flexed. Shoulders are in front of the bar. Long arms, chest up. And if you can hit that position, the rest of it comes really easy for the rest of the hang clean. If you don't get this position right, then that's where issues come in. So key things again are weight is on the heels, shoulders in front of the bar. Okay? If you get those two things right, you're in a good position to generate some force from the hang. So again, we've got a video through just asking for some technical feedback on the hang clean. So a lot of stuff's really good in this. A lot of things are really nice in this clean. But if we think about all that technical stuff we've talked about in the hang clean, in the clean from the floor, we can start seeing a couple of issues with it. So first of all, the weight in the start of the position is in the midfoot. It's not actually back in the heel. You can see that the knees are slightly flexed forward. And the shoulders are kind of over or behind the bar. So you've got that setup position that I said. If you hit that position almost, and the bar's all the way down here, if you tried to pull, you're going to go that direction. Because you extend, you're already almost behind the bar. So the second thing, what the athlete does in this case is they've had to move away from the bar in order to actually get themselves in a position where they can generate some force. But because the weight's still on the middle of the foot, they've separated from the bar. So you can see here, there's separation between the bar and the thigh. So the weight again is now more coming onto the front of the foot. And then as a result, you can see when they hit that power position, you can see how they're up on their toes. Yeah? They haven't extended onto the toes. The weight has pulled them forward onto their toes. And then from that position, they're trying to extend without a good full foot position. And then what will happen as a result of that is instead of the bar path, because if they were here, coming nice and straight up, the bar path is going to be slightly forward. And they're going to end up catching the bar forward. And what you'll find is that'll get worse with weight. The heavier it gets, the more likely you'll see for them to be pulled even further forward. And the athlete will tend to miss the lift out in front where they'll be chasing after a bar and missing it. And it all comes down to that start position because there's actually really nice aggressive pull there. There's good extension and there's a good catch. The only thing that's missing is just that setup at the very start of the lift. And that would take care of the rest of the issues you're seeing. You should touch, you should touch your thigh, not bounce it. The reason she bounces it off her thigh is because she creates distance between the bar and her thigh earlier in the lift. So the bar gets away from her. So to make contact, she has to accentuate that too much. Now the idea, again, people have been taught this, where they come up and they're told to hit the bar of the thigh. Because there's some, in their head it's extension. Yeah, if I drive my hips forward, I'm extending my hips. But if I drive my hips forward, have I extended my hips? My hips are still in flexion. So what you're looking for is, from that position, you're looking to extend up. And as you do that, you will brush it, but not bounce it off a hard hit. So it should make contact, and the contact's letting you know that you stay close to it, but the contact is this direction. It's in that triple extension rather than that hit into the bar. Find one or two good strength exercises that you like, that your athletes like doing, that they can do competently. Get them really good at it. And then use them as your strength exercises. So get good at something so as you're actually able to get an adaptation from that. So varying your exercises too much, to me, is a waste of time because, it's always, if you think like, an athlete has this amount of force, their ability, they have ability to generate this amount of force. When they first start a new exercise, they can display about this amount of it. And then over time, they get better at displaying it. And then as they get better at it, it pushes on the total amount of force. But if you're constantly changing the exercise, they're never getting to the point where they can actually push on and cause adaptation. So I kind of think it doesn't have to be these exercises, it's just picking whatever ones you think you've got access to that are easy, that work for your guys, but get them good so as they can actually shift some load with them as well. I'll tend to try and find what works best for that athlete and then just stick with that. So the shorter ones they're happier in a back squat, but some are happy in a front squat. Again, with a front squat, I'll maybe even have them a front squat where if they're having issues getting wrists in and feeling uncomfortable there, I'll just put like wraps around the bar and have them hold it from their straps. So again, it's less on there, but it's just finding what I feel I can actually put some load in there. I mean, you're going to be more upright in a front squat. You're going to be more limited by your back strength than you will be in a back squat, weirdly. But it's still going to be a good overall strength exercise. There's lots of different types of eccentric training. The key, so if you think about that video at the very start, the key eccentric quality that's required, if you think about Dan Bramble doing his drop jump, the key eccentric quality is eccentric rate of force. So it's the ability to generate a very high force very quickly at the start of that eccentric movement. So there's not a big eccentric give. So there's a difference between eccentric and eccentric, you can call it contraction, but an eccentric activity where you're working down through the range, and eccentric force production where there's high force at the start of a movement and becomes what's called quasi-isometric, where the muscle itself is almost locking and the tissue around it is giving. Yeah? So we do a lot in terms of eccentric, more focused on any sort of heavy eccentric work we do tends to be more towards tendon development and connective tissue, but we do a lot of things with like yo-yos. So your yo-yo leg press, or we've got like a K-box, where we do things where you're looking to have a very fast change of direction. And it's that very fast change of direction that's developing that eccentric rate of force, which for me is the key strength characteristic to develop up for your plyometric, your explosive activities. So, but you'll get that from your plyometric workout in the track, you get that from running, you can also get it from speed squats, where you maybe have a reasonably light weight, and you'll set them how quickly can they do 10 or 15 reps, and it's the change of direction, and it's that change of direction where you're developing those key eccentric qualities, because if suddenly something's falling, they have to generate a lot of force quickly to cause a change in direction.